He has a job. He has friends. He has a girlfriend, maybe a wife. He has options most generations could only dream of. What he doesn't have is any plans to ever become a father. He's not unhappy. He's not rebelling. He's just opted out. And in 2026, there are millions like him. The rise of the opt-out male. For decades, the conversation about declining birth rates has focused almost entirely on women. Women delaying motherhood. Women prioritizing careers. Women freezing eggs. But something quieter has been happening on the other side of the equation. According to Pew Research, the share of American men under 50 who say they are unlikely to ever have children has climbed sharply over the past decade. In a recent survey, more than 4 in 10 childless adults said they probably won't have kids, and the gender gap is closing fast. Among men in their 20s and 30s, the number citing "I just don't want to" as their primary reason has nearly doubled. This isn't infertility. It isn't waiting. It's a decision. Welcome to the era of the opt-out male. The opt-out male isn't one person. He's a pattern. He's the 32-year-old software engineer in Austin who maxes out his 401k and travels 4 times a year. He's the 28-year-old electrician in Ohio who watched his older brother drown in childcare costs. He's the 38-year-old creative director in Brooklyn who looked at the math, looked at the climate forecast, and looked at his own childhood, and decided, calmly, that the chain stops with him. What unites them isn't ideology, it's arithmetic. The USDA estimated the cost of raising a child to age 17 at over $310,000. And that's before college, before housing inflation, before private healthcare premiums. For many American men, fatherhood now reads less like a life stage and more like a leveraged buyout of their own future. Let's start with what almost every opt-out male will mention first: money. In 1985, a single full-time income could buy a starter home, support a family of 4, and leave room for a vacation. In 2026, the same demographic is renting into their 40s. Median home prices in the US are now more than 7 times the median household income. Childcare in major metros routinely costs more than in-state college tuition. Student loan balances for millennial men average over $40,000. And here's the part that doesn't get said out loud. Many of these men aren't refusing to be providers, they're refusing to be inadequate ones. A 2024 American Survey Center study found that more than half of childless men under 40 said the single biggest barrier to having kids was the fear that they wouldn't be able to give those kids the life they themselves had or didn't have. For this generation, opting out isn't selfishness, it's a kind of inverted responsibility. For most of human history, fatherhood was the default operating system for a man's life. It gave him status, structure, and a story. That story has fractured. Religious affiliation among American men under 35 has dropped to historic lows. Marriage rates have collapsed alongside it. Long-term romantic partnership, the traditional on-ramp to fatherhood, has been outpaced by a dating economy that, for a growing percentage of men, simply doesn't deliver matches at all. Pew data shows that more than 60% of single men under 30 in the US report being single, compared to about 30% of women in the same age bracket. The math of modern dating leaves a significant chunk of young men outside the partnership pipeline entirely. You can't opt into fatherhood if you can't get to the table where it's offered. So what fills the vacuum? For some, it's career. For some, gaming, fitness, or hobbies that scale infinitely without dependence. For some, it's nothing at all, and that's its own crisis. Here's the reason that almost never makes it into the policy debates, but shows up in nearly every honest interview with an opt-out male. This is the first generation of American men to grow up with widespread access to mental health language. They use words like intergenerational trauma, emotional unavailability, attachment style. Some of them grew up with fathers who were physically present and emotionally absent. Some grew up with no father at all. And many of them have looked carefully at what they inherited and concluded, I don't want to pass this on until I've fixed it, and I'm not sure I can fix it in time. This is a quieter, more uncomfortable layer of the trend. It isn't anti-child. In some ways, it's the opposite. It's a refusal to bring a child into a life the man hasn't yet figured out how to live well himself. You can call that responsible. You can call that an excuse. The data doesn't pick a side, but the men picking it are real. Of course, this trend has critics, and serious ones. Demographers warn that sustained fertility below replacement rate creates a slow-motion economic crisis, shrinking workforces, strained social security, fewer caregivers for an aging population. Japan, Italy, and South Korea offer a preview, and the United States is now drifting toward the same demographic cliff. Cultural commentators add another layer. They argue that opting out of fatherhood is being marketed as freedom, but it often delivers the opposite. A longer adolescence, weaker community ties, and what researchers call deaths of despair, rising fastest among childless men over 40. A growing body of research suggests that fathers, on average, report higher life satisfaction in midlife than childless men, even when controlling for income, marriage, and health. In other words, the choice feels rational at 28. The bill may come due at 58. The opt-out male is making a real choice, but it isn't a free one. Whether you celebrate this trend or fear it, you can't ignore its effects. School districts in 19 states have started consolidating campuses due to enrollment drops. The pet industry has more than doubled in a decade. Americans now spend over $150 billion a year on animals, much of it on what marketers openly call fur babies. Real estate developers in major metros are quietly redesigning units around solo and child-free buyers. And politically, the conversation is shifting fast. Pro-natalist voices on the right are pushing tax credits, baby bonuses, and family formation incentives. Voices on the left are arguing that the answer isn't more babies, it's more affordable lives, so the people who do want kids can have them. What almost nobody in the political debate is doing, yet, is asking the opt-out male himself what would actually change his mind. When he is asked, his answer is surprisingly consistent. Affordable housing, paid leave, a partner he trusts, a community he belongs to, a future he believes in. Notice what's not on that list. More lectures. The opt-out male isn't a villain. He isn't a hero. He's a mirror. He's showing us what happens when an entire generation of men is given more choice than any generation before them, and less stability, less community, and less of a coherent story about what their lives are supposed to mean. Fatherhood used to be the default. Now it's a decision. And for millions of American men, the decision, for now, is no. The question for the rest of us isn't whether to judge that choice. It's whether we want to live in a country that makes yes worth saying again. If this video gave you something to think about, hit subscribe. We publish a deep dive every week on the trends quietly reshaping American life. And if you're one of the men this video is about, or you love one, I'd genuinely like to hear your perspective in the comments. Thanks for watching.